Welcome to the SDA Housing Podcast, brought to you by Ndis Property Australia. Before starting this episode, we need to provide a general disclaimer. Information contained in this podcast is general in nature only. It does not take into account the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. You need to consider your financial situation and needs before making any decisions based on the information in this podcast. And you should consider seeking independent and professional advice for your personal circumstances. All right, let's begin.
Hello everybody, my name is Min and I'm your co-host with Matthew, and you're listening to the SDA Housing Podcast, a show that explains, highlights, guides and brings awareness about all things SDA in this ever-changing NDS world. Matthew, how are you today?
Very good, very good. How about yourself?
Well, thank you. We're here today because Matthew asked for this podcast topic to occur. Matthew, what is today's topic about?
So today's topic is about talking to providers, both the process of talking to them before you've built a property or before you've purchased a property, and then after, and finding out that information. How does that process look in terms of actually speaking to them and getting information? And we just kind of wanted to talk about put some clarity into how that would work or things to be aware of.
So I guess the podcast episode topic is called when and if to talk to provider. That's pretty much the theme then. Okay, cool. So Matthew, why did you ask? I mean,
Well, I feel like a lot of people approach us and they hear about, supply and demand, supplier participants, and then from there, obviously they want clarification on, okay, well, if there's demand in this area, I should be able to talk to a provider to find out how many participants they have, the details of all their participants, a number of questions which the provider might not be able to give them.
And what's the problem with these requests, Matthew?
Well, I feel in a lot of situations you will have a provider which probably gets approached by different members of the public every day, multiple calls, asking these sort of questions with no real intent to purchase a property, or they don't have any property there ready to tenant. And from the provider's perspective, this looks like a waste of time for them.
I guess from the listener's point of view, Matthew, they don't really understand what you're going on about here. So I'm going to pretend I'm a caller.
Okay. Yep.
You're a provider. And I want our listeners to hear this conversation and see the good and the bad of how this conversation goes.
Okay.
This is a made-up script and I'm just going to go with the flow, okay? Ring, ring.
Hi there. My name's Mr. Provider.
Hello, Mr. Provider. I'm Mr. Investor. I was told that you're the provider in this suburb over here. Is that correct?
That is one of the areas that we do provide services to.
Wonderful. Well, I want to invest in one of the packages for sale that I've seen around online, and there's builders promoting this package, and I want to buy it. But before I do, I want to know how many participants you have in the area for SDA funding. Can you please tell me the information, please?
I can't really tell you that because I can't divulge that information on individual participants in the area.
Why not? I mean, you're a provider in the area. You're a care provider, right? You should have a whole bunch of participants on your books, and if they're SDA funded or not, surely you know the information, surely.
I mean, we do have that information. Some of it we can't divulge. And in terms of your situation, have you started building?
No, I don't know. I want to think about investing in the SDA. Before I spend $800,000, I want to know the data you have, the participants you have, the funding you have, what guarantees you have that you give to me as an investor, and all the information that I need to know as an investor to think about proceeding with my investment. Can you give me the information, please?
No, I cannot.
Why is that?
Because I either can't divulge that information because it's private data from participants who there's confidential implications for that data, as well as that you might be building and you might be building for having your project complete in 12 months. And we do not know what participants we might have on our books in 12 months.
What do you mean? I mean, surely your participants in your area are going to be waiting for my house to be built for your company to use for your participants, right? I mean, sure, that's pretty straightforward. I mean, I'm sure there's not many people ringing you up to offer their generosity of giving you a built house in your suburb. Surely no one's ringing you up as well at the same time as I am. Surely not.
I mean, we get calls all the time from people both who have built properties and who do not have built properties asking for our services to provide participants to the house.
But I'm ready to do business here. I mean, come on, let's just do business.
But you haven't built your property and you don't know when you'll build it or if you'll build it.
So you're telling me that if I start building this house with my builder, you can't guarantee me that I'll have any participants in 12 to 15 months' time. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
Why?
Because I don't know what the state of SDA / the participants in the area will be in 15 months.
So even though you have SDA participants now, you can't guarantee they'll still be around in a year's time. Is that what you're saying?
They might be different participants. They might be still around. We might have more participants. We might have less participants. We might be working in different areas. We might be working in the same area.
Okay. Well, if I build for you, can you give me a head lease or a guarantee or something?
No, because it's dependent on the participants living in the property.
You can't guarantee me any participants. You can't guarantee me any rent or head lease. But it's all risks on me though, Mr. Provider.
That's correct, yes.
So there's no assurances at all for me at all that I'm de-risking my investment then?
No.
Okay. End of script.
That's the end of the script.
So that will be a regular phone call chat that most investors will be having with most providers around Australia.
If they can get onto them.
What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, a lot of providers, they might call them up and they might say, hi, I'm Mr. Investor and I want to potentially tenant my house, which I may or may not build, and I will need participants in 12 months or 15 months, which you may or not have. And there's a decent probability that a provider might not give them a call back on that. Maybe.
I think, Matt, if I was in the provider's shoes, I would say, have you bought the land yet? No. Have you engaged the builder yet? No. Have you chosen a block yet? No. Well, this is all theoretical then. Until you're ready to go, I mean, we're not really going to waste our time talking to you, Mr. Investor, about all the information you're after. So therein lies a problem, Matt. These investors out there, or developers, they want to know everything on the books of the provider, the said provider. The problem is, Matt, not every provider has, we're talking about care providers here, by the way. SIL providers, care providers, as they're also known, they only have a small book of participants in the areas that they work in. I mean, the average SIL provider would only have about 50 to 100 in a particular area, participants. And even still, Matt, there's only a small handful of SDA participants anyway.
Yeah, and at any one point as well. And that would change week to week, month to month.
So the challenges of communication here is, so the key topic here of this podcast episode is, when can a person get through to a care provider or SDA provider to find out data and resources and proof of demand? I think that's the key question here, isn't it, Matthew? And as you can see there, that sample scenario script that we just did, you and I did as a provider and as an investor, I'm sure these SDA providers handle 10, 20, 30 of those calls a day.
Yep.
I mean, Matthew, the other day, it was just yesterday, there was an inquiry into our office from an e-newsletter that went out from 3 days ago from our office on a brand new, a 2-year-old built HPS house for sale in Deebing Heights. And someone rang up and said, I want to know the name of the provider. I want the details. I will ring them up right now. I was on the phone call with someone else in the office here, and they provided information. And I can assure you, Matthew, that they wouldn't have gotten through to that provider because they would have rung up saying the same thing. I want to know what the rates are. I want to know what the income is. I want to know the participant funding. I want to know how long the lease is. I want to know your management agreement. I want to know. And some poor girl on the other end of the line taking that call would have been like, oh my God, who are you? You're an investor who's about to buy which property? We've got 7 houses in that area. We don't know which one's for sale, nor can I disclose information behind that house unless authorised by my boss or the owner, which I don't have at the moment. So, Matthew, the other thing is a lot of investors who work with providers, they actually don't, some, I'm not saying all, some have a bad relationship with their provider. I mean, the reason why it's being sold here is because it's it's divorce, right? Between husband and wife, so they want to get out. But, it's often hard for investors to get through to providers to find the information they want. And that is, why is the house empty? When will it be filled? What's your likelihood of inquiry rate for your house that I'm looking at buying that's already built and empty, if that's the case? They want to know the process. So, Matt, it's a lot of information that they're trying to find out to make the decision, aren't they, Matt? It really is complex for the investor as well.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, we're just trying to, I suppose, raise awareness of what these conversations look like and just things to be aware of. Yeah.
Actually, on the whiteboard in front of us here, there's just 3 points here in front of you. Can you read those 3 out and explain what they mean?
So first one is builder-led, which is essentially, I would say most packages out there would be builder-led. That's where the builder has identified a block of land which suits the requirements in terms of the standardized design for an SDA, and it can be built in that location. They have access to that land, and so provided contracts are signed, they will build in that location. So that would be where it's builder-led. It's led by the builders.
And there's no information or data attached to that transaction to show comfort at all to an investor. No.
Second one is participant-led. So in a participant-led situation, you would have individual participants who want to move into or are waiting to move into an NDIS property. And so that's obviously a very good situation, I would say.
Because where the participants have been identified, Matt.
Yeah. So the participants are there. They're ready to move in. Obviously, in situations like this, it's a bit up in the air because depending on how long your build time is, are they still going to be there?
Correct. So what we've seen a lot in Queensland is build time frames blowing out by 6 to 12 months extra, in which case common sense says if it's going to take an extra year, making a 2-year build, for example, it's going to be very hard for a participant to have waited that long. They would have gone somewhere else to another house, another builder, and moved into a house that's SDA compliant. And they're a larger problem. There's no guarantee they'll still be around by the end of completion of the house, That's the best one to go for, obviously, Matt.
Yep. And then the third option, you've got provider-led. So that's where there's providers who have been identified in the area that are fairly confident in their ability to quickly and or easily tenant a property. So while that's not a guarantee on the provider's end, it does give some level of assurance because they at least are fairly certain, I suppose, on current demand numbers, they'd be able to tenant a property currently fairly quickly, bearing in mind that in most cases, providers are paid a percentage of the gross income of the property. So it's in there, regardless of where your property is or the provider you work with, it's in their best interest to tenant the property and tenant the property at the highest funding level.
And we're talking about an SDA provider here, not a SIL provider.
Yes.
So the SIL providers would feed participants to the SDA provider. The SDA provider then processes what's applicable in terms of tenancy matching and areas, and they all work together with possibly a support coordinator to fill up housing around the area, around the products that are available out there. Yeah. So, Matt, when is it impossible to find out the information you can get that you want to get from a provider? When's it impossible?
I assume you're speaking on these 3 categories?
Well,
I would say, chronologically, I would say if you haven't started or you haven't put anything together in terms of you're not building anything, you're just calling up, it's probably going to be relatively difficult, I would say, to get information from an individual provider about their individual participants for a hypothetical situation that might arise in 12 months.
We often see provider comfort letters out there, Matt, which says, we, the provider, hereby confirm that this address, this location, this suburb is of high demand for SDA participants. We hereby confirm that we do have participants waiting for this type of design house, being HPS or robust or improvability. And that gives comfort to investors that they've received something in writing, with a proposed package for them to consider to invest in.
Yep.
That's the only comfort they can really give, or investors can get, really, Matt.
Yeah, is that
because really, if someone says to you on the phone,
comfort. Yeah.
To be honest, let's be honest here. If someone says to you on the phone, "Yeah, mate, we got like 10 participants in the area, all good, mate. Should be right, mate." That's a verbal,
that does
non-binding discussion.
And is it relevant to a year's time or however long?
Because I'm sure that provider would have linked up with 4, 5, 6 other builders or investors and allocated those participants to other houses.
Yep.
So by the time you go back to them in 9 months' time with your, hey, my house is built, They're like, who are you again? Sorry, we've already allocated our participants to other houses, so we've got nothing left now.
I'd say that's a point to address as well with SDA demand and supply data in general. So it does give you some indication of people looking currently in certain areas, but it's just a snapshot at that point of who was looking. And you don't know how that would change in the next week, in the next month, in the next several months.
We find that working with or talking to providers who actually have a big network of participants coming in, their pipeline, a good brand as well, Matthew.
Yep.
They're the ones that actually do well, and also an honest approach as well, Matt. I mean, there are a lot of small providers out there who cannot do the volume and keep up with the demand.
No way. Yeah. So, I mean, if they have like one or two participants here and there, that's, no way.
Yeah, it's not enough. The big brands, the ones who've been around, the ones who are, who are honest about their services, they're the ones that you should, really work with, and if you know the market and the system, you should be able to find out very, very easily, very quickly who those providers are, those SDA providers are. I mean, yeah.
And those are the sort of providers as well who would be willing and able to do a comfort letter.
Yeah.
Expressing that they do have, rolling demand, I suppose.
Yeah. To our listeners, I want you to remember one thing. Nothing is guaranteed, okay? Even if you've got a comfort letter, that's not binding as well, because things change. A comfort letter could have been given out to bloody 10 other people, Matthew, to be honest.
Yep.
And there were 6 houses built, and then there's 2 participants per houses. That's 12 gone of the pool of participants there. So when you're doing your research, invest in areas where there's a huge pool of participants in that area. The numbers are strong. There's not an oversupply in the marketplace there. Talk to SIL providers on the ground at the grassroots level to find out, hey, what's your opinion? What are your thoughts? Get the information, and then look again. Another provider, get their feedback as well, and ring again, someone else. The point is, it is hard to get through to people who are providers because they're not here. They're in the business of caring, not supplying due diligence data to investors. They're not in the game of investor analysis. They're not, and it's important that we as people who are contacting and dealing with providers to understand that they are quite busy themselves, What else do they talk about? What else, Matt?
I mean, I feel like that's the main point that I kind of wanted to shed some light on, kind of the provider's perspective in finding tenants for an investor who's looking at the numbers, I suppose.
It takes time. It takes time to find participants, right? And more so importantly, Matthew, if I was a participant myself and you rang me as a provider, I would say to you, sorry, is the house built yet? And you say no. And say, sorry, I want to touch and feel it first.
Yep.
Like when we get the release of the iPhone 15 coming out this year, we want to go to the Apple store and touch the phone ourselves first, right? We want to touch it and feel it and see it.
I mean, if you were, in most cases, if you're renting a house, you'd want to inspect it. Is there something there?
Yeah.
Is there something I can actually see?
So participants are no different. They want to touch something tangible, right? So people don't like off the plan. They won't commit to a rental agreement until they've touched and seen it and feel it. Let's be honest. That's just the hard facts of life here. So, it's often hard and challenging for participants to make a decision when they haven't seen the house yet because it's not built yet. And I think really the best case scenario is getting an ELY from a participant to a care provider or a SDA provider to get comfort that they want to move in there because they're ready to go in there. I mean, it takes a year of marketing prior to completion for a SDA provider to do their marketing. And then even when it's built, we're looking at 6 to 9 months to fill up the second or third participant, okay? So make sure you have enough buffer in your cash flow and your finance to pay for an empty house for 3 to 5 months, right? Because the reality is you're getting one participant in the first few months and then the second one 6 months later. It's not that quick. Another tool to use really is the hub, what do you call it? The Housing Hub portal, and also the Go Nest website as well. They show houses for rent, participant matching availability of different areas. So as an investor, you can look at these resources to see what's available out there in terms of pipeline and products being built or for sale or for rent, That helps you make a decision to see if there's an oversupply in a certain area as well. Matthew, any final words of advice to our listeners who are thinking about this whole topic of how do I talk to a provider? How do I engage a provider? I think we all know that once you've bought a property or engaged a contract,
that's when it's appropriate.
Yeah.
Yep.
But if you're still shopping around and you haven't made a decision yet, and you don't understand SDA yet, I think if you happen to get through to someone on the phone on the other side of the line at the SDA office, SDA provider office, it's going to be it'll be a very quick phone call, I think, Matt.
Yep.
They're not going to spend much time unless you are a serious investor who's actually proceeding already. Yeah.
Yeah, because exactly what you mentioned before, they're in the business of providing care and providing a place for people to live at, not provide financial analysis.
Yep, cool. Thank you so much, Matt. Thank you very much, everyone. We'll listen to, if anyone has any stories or queries about this very topic, please send an email through to Erin, our podcast manager. She'll be able to give us your any questions or queries, and we'll be able to give a private, confidential answer back on their situation as well, because everyone's situation is different in terms of their process in processing the information regarding SDA and the rollout of their house being built, and different regions have different demand data as well. Yeah. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode. Please make sure you are subscribed and following us so you can keep in the loop with all of our upcoming episodes. We would really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating, a written review, and to share this podcast with those that could benefit. Until next time, catch you on the next episode.